A homemade pair of trousers amongst the clothing suggested Park had slipped up in his haste to throw a collection of clothes into the lake, along with his wife.
I was intrigued to find that there was no zip or waistband in the trousers, and that made me think, if this person is supposed to run away from home with these clothes, why did she take a pair of unfinished trousers with her?
So for me, this clothing was Carol's, and it went down with her. Now, that was either done to make it appear that she'd left and taken some clothing with her, or it was clothing that perhaps had become involved in her murder. You know, it was laid in the bedroom at the time, it maybe got splattered with blood, it may well have been used to clean up the blood, who knows.
Park had never admitted guilt when arrested in 1997, but now a former inmate came forward, claiming Park confessed to him while on remand in Preston Prison.
One of the challenges for us was that prison confessions are notoriously unreliable, and we have to challenge them and check them out and look at the motive for them.
Could Park, a man known for his self-control, have suddenly broken his silence and confessed after 21 years of living with the secret?
He was being called names such as Lady of the Lake, bin bags, and he didn't really have anybody to turn to.
He was in and out of the chapel. He was seen in corners, crying to himself, you know, in a very, very low way.
Police tracked down Park's former cellmate, and he too claimed Park had told him he'd killed his wife. But the cellmate had learning disabilities and a mental age of 9.
He was very, very insistent that what he was saying was the truth, to such an extent, like with children, I suppose. You know, when you show children you don't believe them, you know, they get indignant and they get so frustrated that you don't believe them that they demand you to believe them.
What initially seemed like a setback proved to be a bonus.
It actually strengthened his evidence, because the way that his learning difficulties were, it meant he couldn't make things up, if you will. You know, you couldn't give him a story to remember and he could remember it. So what the medical experts were saying is that everything he tends to say is the truth. And the only time he tends to lie is about himself.
Road here at the end, just put an R and a D.
D.
Okay, and what town?
Preston. Preston.
Preston, put Preston there.
The cellmates had a teacher-pupil relationship. Park helped him write letters home to his mother, and in return, his cellmate helped him adapt to prison life.
Therefore, I think Park felt assured. I think there's an element of trust between the two, and in a weaker moment, there's no doubt in my mind, he probably did tell him.
He would never think, you know, that 7 years later this young man would come back to haunt him in the courtroom. He would probably think, well, no one's going to believe a word he says. You know, I need to unburden myself.
By January 2004, the police had the ropes, the rock, Carol's clothing, prison confessions, and the existing circumstantial evidence against Park. He'd got away with murder for 28 years. Now police were confident that they could finally bring him to justice. But when it came, his arrest was distinctly bizarre.
He didn't say anything, really. He just looked straight at me. No real surprise, no reaction whatsoever. Certainly no fear in his eyes. His main concern was, you know, can I get dressed, or can I get cleaned up? I think he said, and he wanted to go upstairs and have a shower.
He came out of the bathroom where myself and other officers were stood, and he was naked. He was carrying a towel in his hand. He made no attempt whatsoever to conceal himself, in fact quite the reverse, and proceeded then to walk about and then eventually get dressed in the bedroom.
If she felt unwell,
in 1997, Park had dominated the interviews and the officers.
Okay.
So we decided this time in 2004 that we would be in control of the interviews. I didn't want him to be leading the interviews. The interviews are the opportunity for the police to ask questions of a suspect, not the other way around.
I think he saw it as a challenge. He saw it as something that he was going to win. He wasn't going to admit anything.
Park denied confessing to Carol's murder while inside. but he was at a loss to explain why his cellmate would have lied.
He states that, I'll read it to you. He told me that he put his wife in a black bin bag with weights in it to weigh the body down. He told me that he then put the body inside the bag with weight, over the side of the boat and into the water.
Nonsense.
Park then said he went home to his kids. The kids asked where their mother was. Park told them that their mother was not coming back.
Fantasy.
The next day, Park took the kids to Blackpool. And that's the part that really sticks with him in his mind, apparently. Did you tell him that?
No.
Did you discuss any trips to Blackpool with your children?
No.
None?
I did not discuss any details of the case with anyone at Preston Prison.
So this person has told the police, from your point of view, a pack of lies.
I'm astonished. I can see no sense in this at all.
Well, unless he's telling the truth.
Pardon?
I said unless he's telling the truth, which I suspect he is.
He isn't.
Park talked for hours about his knotting expertise, until he realised his own ropes and knots could link him to the body.
This is your habit, isn't it?
Well, I'd hardly call it a habit.
What would you call it, then?
Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. You've got my knots, you've got my ropes. You can see that sometimes I put stoppers on, sometimes I don't. It isn't a habit.
You mentioned stopper knots earlier. You picked that up in mountaineering, I guess?
This is what we're getting at. You're trying to tell me that you think I tied these knots on this body. Well, I didn't.
Is it not the fact, Mr. Park, that you left your knotting signatures all over your dead wife's body?
No.
I was pretty sure when I was listening to him that I was listening to a guilty man, a man who had killed his wife and was doing his very, very best to keep himself out of it and to defend his behaviour over the years. There was a few periods of deathly silence when particular pointed questions were put to him. We thought that at one point, when we asked him if he'd killed his wife, or when we accused him of killing his wife, that he was almost going to break down and say yes.
I'll put it to you, Mr. Park, that the evidence against you is overwhelming, and I urge you to think about your position carefully. Please remember the caution. This is your chance to provide the police with your version of events that happened on or about the 16th of July, 1976. Is there any further explanation you'd like to give us?
No, thank you.
Is there anything further you'd like to add or clarify?
No, thank you.
Jeff, any further questions?
You murdered Carol Park.
Is that a question?
You murdered Carol Park, didn't you? Yes or no?
No.
Police believe Park had been within an ace of confessing. Nevertheless, after 2 days of questioning, they charged him with murder, again. It had taken 28 years, but retired schoolteacher Gordon Park was about to stand trial for the murder of his wife back in 1976. But before then, an amazing stroke of luck slotted another piece of the jigsaw into place. Park's arrest hit the national headlines, prompting a couple to come forward with a remarkable story. They claim to have seen a man throw a package into the lake at the time of Carol's disappearance. Had they witnessed Park dumping his wife's body?
When the Youngs got in touch, I must admit, there was probably nobody more cynical in the office than yours truly.
In July 1976, John and Joan Young were on holiday in the lakes. It was a memorable trip because John proposed. The couple had parked their car on the quiet eastern shore of Coniston to read the day's newspapers.
Ours was the only car in the car park where we were. There wasn't a lot of people about. In fact, it was very quiet. It was late morning and I noticed a boat out in the lake. And then the boat stopped and I was watching someone in the boat was doing something. He was a youngish man with a thin face who was wearing glasses, kept looking at our car. and I wondered why I kept looking. That was really what made me keep watching.